Batter up.
Rob and Chris, they're on the air. Yankees, Mets, they're everywhere. From the Bronx to Queens, the diamond gleams. MLB talk, the ultimate team. MLB is the place to be. Rob and Chris with the pitch you'll see. Swinging stacks and stories fly. Baseball talk that's amplified.
And welcome to a new episode of NY MLB Talk with your hosts Rob and Chris as we cover the Mets, Yankees, and all of Major League Baseball. And if you're watching us right now on YouTube, hit that sub button. We'd really appreciate it. And also, if you want to follow us on Twitter, on TikTok, it's at NY MLB Talk. Rob is at R. Maraska, myself at CP7NY. Rob, we got a very special guest. Why don't you introduce him and let's get going.
Yeah, we have former Major League pitcher Jim Kern, who, when I was a kid, he was one of the best relievers in baseball at the time for the Texas Rangers, and he started his career with the Indians. Jim, thanks for coming on. I've been looking forward to this since I talked to you. So thanks for coming on.
Well, it just goes to show you got to get a life.
Yeah, well, I know, but listen, this is a fun life talking to you guys. So listen, you were a 3-time All-Star, three games in a row, right? 3 All-Star games in a row. You were one of the first really, really great relief pitchers. But tell us, when you were a kid, before you got to the big leagues, what team did you follow as a kid?
I really didn't. To be honest, I was a baseball player, really not a baseball fan. I grew up in mid-Michigan, so probably if I had to pick one, it would have been the Tigers. But I even felt bad in the minor leagues. I spent better part of 7 years in the minor leagues. When I got out of high school, my senior year of high school, I could throw the ball 92, 93. I tell people I could throw the ball through a cement block wall. I just couldn't hit it with any consistency. They gave me credit in the minor leagues for a no-hitter when I didn't hit anybody. So, it was that type of thing. And in the minor leagues, I really felt bad when you had kids there their entire life. The only thing they wanted to do was be a major league ball player, and they would get released and leave. And here I am, playing baseball to put myself through college, never had the idea that I needed to play Major League Baseball. I just enjoyed the game and was making enough money to put myself through college, and felt bad when some of these people where their whole life depended on making the major leagues that got released.
Now, before you were in the majors, you were also served in the Marine Corps, correct?
Yeah, in 1970, I got invited to Major League Spring Training, so I dropped out of college after the fall semester, and that's when we had the draft, of course, 1969, actually, when we had the draft. And so I can remember sitting there on January 1st when they were pulling the ping pong balls out of this machine, and each one had a number on it, and each number corresponded to a date when they were going to draft so many people. And in 1969, they drafted up to, I think, day 263. And March 15th, my birthday, was number 14. So it was a matter as if I got drafted in January or February. So I immediately went looking for reserve units. And Army had a 5-year waiting list. Air Force, Coast Guard, Navy had 3-year waiting lists. Guess what? The Marine Corps didn't have any waiting list. So I joined the Marine Corps out of Columbus, Ohio. And little did I know it was the most fortunate thing I'd ever done in my life, because I went in as part of a motor transport unit. And so when I went in the Marine Corps, you went through the normal boot camp in Parris Island, then infantry training in Camp Lejeune, and then they sent me to a motor transport unit at Camp Lejeune for the remainder of my 6 months. Well, what that gave you a military driver's license. And my original MOS, military occupational status, was 3516, which was heavy equipment mechanic. My secondary MOS was 3531, which was driver. And of course, in the Marine Corps, one of your three is always 0311, which is grunt. And so I got this military driver's license. So any place I went for the next 5.5 years, I was the only person in these units that had a military driver's license. And so I became the company driver for the captain or the major. And while everybody else was playing in the snow with their rifles, I was in my 5-ton pickup, sleeping in the front seat, protecting it.
That's great.
Yeah.
And you were your nickname, right? Which you also named Emu. You also named a company after that. How did you? I know how you got the nickname, but I want to hear it from you. How did you get your nickname?
Well, at the time I was 6'5", a little better than that, weighed about 180, 185. If I turned sideways, the only shadow on the ground was a pair of lips, And so as I walked around with my knuckles dragging on the pavement and such, and I would scream like a crow just for the hell of it. And I'm walking past Fritz Peterson and Pat Dobson one morning in the Cleveland clubhouse, and they were two of the bigger wackos you ever want to meet. Great guys, but crazy. And they had played together in New York, so they knew each other well. Well, they're doing this crossword puzzle, and the clue they're working on is the world's largest non-flying bird. And I walked past flapping my arms and sounding like a crow, and at that instant, I became Emu. And then Pat moved it to the amazing Emu.
Yeah.
And so, and then when I got traded from Cleveland to Texas, Buddy Bell and Larvell Blanks came over with it. Johnny Grubb was there. John Ellis was there, and they had all known me in the Cleveland clubhouse as Emu. So I was immediately Emu when I went to Texas, and it just rolled on from there.
Yeah, that is a great nickname. Go ahead, Chris. You wanted to
Yes,
ask something.
Jim, you said you were wild in the minors, right? What changed in your approach pitching or whatever you did to get you to get called up to the majors with the Indians?
It's I think the big transition in '72. I was on the 40-man roster, wasn't aware of it, in Elmira, New York, and I was 3-11. And we had a team that was probably only 20 games below 500 and playing in the Eastern League, but we played against either Pittsfield or West Haven, forget which one the Pirates minor league team was, AA. And on that team was Jim Campanis and a guy named Dave Augustine, both of which played in the majors, Augie for Pittsburgh and Campani for LA, I believe. And they were in winter ball. After the season, I enrolled in Michigan State, and I was down there doing my junior year in a chemical engineering curriculum. And I had finished a associate's degree at a junior college because that's what I could afford to do in Michigan. And 3 weeks into the semester, I get this call from this team in Mexico, Las Mochas. And they asked me if I wanted to come down and play winter ball. They said Dave Augustine and Jim Campanis had recommended they called me for a pitcher they needed. Well, hell, I had been 3-11 that summer in AA. This is the last thing from my mind. And I think I had made $750 a month in AA. And they offered me $2,000 a month, plus free housing, food, and everything else. Well, hell, I dropped out of college the next day, and 2 days later, I was on the way to Tucson, Arizona. And then they flew up in their private plane, which was like a 185 Cessna, picked me up, and then flew me to Las Mochas, which was 11 hours south of the border. And we land in Las Mochas, and they put me up in a hotel. Well, the two people that spoke English in the entire town just dropped me off. I walked around eating. I'd go in these restaurants, they had dirt floor, thatched roof. This is back in the 70s, and had no chance with a menu. So I'd take the waiter and we walk around one table, and I'd point to something a guy was eating. We'd walk to the next table. I'd point to something somebody else was eating. That's the way I got fed for the first month. And then one of the members of the team was Aurelio Rodriguez, who played third baseman for the Tigers, the best arm I ever saw at third base. And they put me with Aurelio rooming on the road because Aurelio spoke English. And I can remember one night in Culiacan, about 2 o'clock in the morning, you hear this machine gun. And I woke up and I said to Aurelio, "What the hell was that?" He said, "Don't worry, just some drug deal gone bad." This was Mexico.
Yeah.
So I play in Mexico that winter, and I'm pitching well. I'm 8-3. So the next year we go to San Antonio. And now, in the meantime, I had gained about 10 pounds, and I'm starting to get the muscle mass to control this arm. I wear a shirt with a 17.5 neck and a 38 sleeve. So I'm finally getting enough muscle mass to control the length of the lever arm. Go to San Antonio, and Tony Pacheco was the manager, AA manager, and he taught me how to throw a pound ball for a changeup, which helped a lot. I had a lot of trouble throwing any breaking balls anywhere near the plate. And then halfway through the year, Joe Horland gets released by the Oakland A's. And Joe Horland lived in San Antonio. So to beef up attendance some, they talked Joe into coming out and pitching a few games with us with the San Antonio AA team. Well, Joe took me under his arm and taught me the philosophy of pitching, getting ahead of hitters, this kind of stuff, which helped me a lot. Well, I end the season there 11-7. And the next year we go to spring training, and I have spent 4 years in A-ball and 2 in AA at the time. And toward the end of spring training, it looks like I'm going to get sent down to AA again. And I went into Bob Quinn, the farm director, and said, "Bob, I'm not going back to AA. I said, I'm 25, I've got to think about going back to school, finishing my degree, and getting a real life." And Bob says, "Well, we'll give you 6 weeks in AAA." Well, we go to AAA, and I end the season 17-7. I broke the American Association strikeout record for the season with 220 and 189 innings. The last game I pitched that year in Denver, I struck out 19. So at that point, I'm getting my shit together a bit. Yeah. And so they call me up in September. I meet them in Detroit. And walking into a major league clubhouse after 6 years in the minor leagues, kind of like, you're all eyes trying to process all of this. So the first day, Ken Aspermani was the manager, and they have me throw batting practice in Tiger Stadium. Well, the first guy up was Rico Carty, the big man.
Yeah.
And Rico has got basketballs for shoulders, just. And Rico was old at this time, 36 maybe. Had started the season in Mexico. And so Rico gets in there, and Rico gets about 5 feet in front of the plate toward the mound and gets ready to bat. And I said, I hurt my feelings a little bit, So I said, "Rico, get back in the batter's box. I'll throw you some fastballs." He said, "You just throw me your best fastball, kid." And so the first one I threw, he hit right on the screws in upper deck and right field. He's way behind it. The next 4 he parks in left center field in the bleachers. And the first thing I'm thinking is, what the hell am I doing here? And that was my initiation into the major leagues. And then probably we were still in the race, and which was very unusual with Cleveland in the 70s.
Yeah.
And we had a doubleheader against Baltimore, maybe the middle of September. And Fritz Peterson pitched the first game and got beat. Well, that knocked us out of any contention. And they put me in to pitch, start the second game. In the second game, I go 6 innings, haven't given up. I think I gave up 2 hits, no runs. In the 7th, Belanger gets on one way or another, and Bunbury hits a ball right down the first baseline inside of Boog Powell, and 1 run scores. And then Aspermani comes out to the mound to take me out, and the Cleveland fans just set up a hell of a roar booing. And he left me in, and we completed the game, and Cuellar beat me 1-0. It was when Baltimore had 6 consecutive shutouts, and I was number 5.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. That was in September of '74, and it's something you do not see in today's baseball. Complete games, and you pitched a complete game, even though you lost 1-0. But still, that's impressive. And now, forget it. You do not see that anymore. It's just not the same game as when you played.
I think it was interesting that I probably pitched in 500 thereabouts major league games, and that was my one complete game in like 500 appearances.
That's great. Yep. Yeah, but then you were a relief pitcher. Why don't you tell us about the change from being a starter to a reliever?
Well, after spending 6 years in the minor leagues, you'll do anything to stay in the major leagues, include picking up towels, So
yeah.
When in '75 I made the team as a starter, Eckersley and I made the team together, and then in '75 they sent me down when Cleveland traded Gaylord Perry to Texas for Rick Waits, Peterson, and somebody else, Freddie Bean, I think, or Joe Klein, one of the two. And so they needed a spot on the 40-man roster, and they told me they were going to send me to AAA, as that was my last option. And I almost quit and went back to school. I went to AAA. My mind was really toast at that point for about 3 weeks, and then they brought me back up in Boston. And I pitched 6 innings, did well. But unknowns to me, I strained a muscle in my rotor cuff, and I was on the shelf for the rest of the season. Well, in '76, I go to spring training. I'm out of options. And so I'm there kind of on a gratuitous basis. And I pitched 25 or 26 innings and gave up 1 run and got a plaque for a spring training player of the year or whatever. And so at that point, I go to the bullpen. Frank Robinson has to take me or lose me. And I'm the 10th starter out of 10 people. I'm the 10th pitcher out of 10 people in the bullpen. And so I'm pitching mop-up early in the season. Somebody gets their ass kicked in the first couple innings. They go deep and bring me in. Well, I did well. And then I pitched some in the middle of relief in May. And then about June, they're starting to use me with Dave LaRoche, who was a short man on the left side, in save situations and late in the game. Well, I ended the season with about 100 innings, about 60 appearances, was 10-7, 15 saves, and I think a 2.35 ERA. And so that winter was really the first winter of free agency. And so I went from minimum salary of $14,000 the next year to $117,000, and they traded Dave LaRoche. Well, Cleveland at that time, to me, and again, I'm a dirty word in Cleveland for saying it, but they ran the team. Ted Bonda was the president. He used to be the president of Avis Rent-A-Car as a tax write-off. Okay. And so the idea really wasn't winning. It was being competitive to draw a few fans. We drew about 4,000 or 5,000 a night. And, winning wasn't a big thing. And so at that point, when I got traded, they asked me what I thought. I said, well, this is a tax write-off. It really isn't a competitive team. Whenever they get a player that's worth something, they trade him for 2 people that aren't. And that did not go over well with Cleveland. It was interesting. Cleveland a couple of months ago, or maybe 6 months ago, put out the best relievers in Cleveland Indian history. And they had some good ones, and most of them were oriented around their championship teams. And they had an honorable mention for Dave LaRoche. Well, the 2 years he was there, he was about 9-10 with maybe 25 saves and a good 2.36 ERA. I was there for 3 years, was 44-40 with 35 saves and didn't get a mention. I'm well loved in Cleveland, needless to say. But getting traded to Texas, the first trade they make is really traumatic because you walk into the spring training, the guys that were enemies and go, "Hey, I'm on your side now."
Yeah.
And so after you get traded a few times, it becomes academic. You really don't give a shit. But the first time can be really traumatic walking in a situation like that. But it's a whole different world. In Cleveland, I was never drafted in Cleveland. I signed as free agent, went to all the tryout camps, got $1,000 to sign a professional contract, and had spent 6 years in the minor leagues, finally get to the majors, and you're always the kid, that is still trying to make it. When I got traded from Cleveland to Texas after playing in 2 All-Star games in Cleveland,
Yeah.
I was adopted as one of the veterans. You were the meat of the team. You were the muscle. You were one of this probably 25% of the team that were expected to make things happen, which is a totally different feeling when you're treated like that instead of, well, here's the kid, So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Chris, go ahead. You wanted to ask
Yeah,
something?
and you know what? In your trade to Texas, you were traded for a couple of good players, Len Barker and Bobby Bonds. So you weren't just some
Bobby
pushover.
was at the end of his line.
Right.
Barker was coming up. Large Lenny threw a perfect game for Cleveland down the road. Never really was a whole lot more than a 500 pitcher, but Large Lenny had some good stuff. And again, when you're a 500 pitcher with a team that very seldom finishes 500, you're a pretty damn good pitcher.
Yeah. Well, in 1979, you won the Rolaids Relief Man Award in the American League. You had a great 1979 season for Texas. But one thing I remember when I saw you pitch was at the All-Star game when Mazzilli hit the home run off you to tie the game in 79. But the whole season you were just you were great. Could you give us some highlights of what you remember about that season?
Well, I got traded in October from Cleveland to Texas, and then in December they got Sparky Lyle from New York. And in January we did a midwinter banquet, and they invited Sparky and I to the midwinter banquet. We were the holy grail of the bullpen, where we're supposedly going to be. And we were sitting around having drinks after the banquet, and Sparky got up to take a leak. And Pat and I were sitting there, and Pat looked at me and he says, "Kearney," he says, "we got a problem." And I looked at him and says, "No, we don't, Pat. We don't have any problem." I said, "When you traded for Sparky, whom I consider to be one of the 3 best relief pitchers in baseball, I had no question that I was not going to be the short man." I said, "I'm a converted starter." I said, "To me, the way I look at it, my strength in this team is I can give you innings." I said, "Sparky needs to pitch every other day to stay sharp." I said, "My big thing is I should be Sparky's setup man. I can give you 4, 5, 6 innings if need be to get you to Sparky. If we got a lead early in the game, our starting pitcher's struggling, bring me in." I said, "I'll be more than happy to be Sparky's setup man." And Pat's eyes went like, wow, okay, yeah, we don't have this problem. Well, and then I said to him, for 3 years in Cleveland, I was allowed to throw nothing but a fastball. And I said, and I made 2 All-Star games doing it, understand that. But I need to be able to throw my palm ball for a change and my breaking ball. I said, it's just a matter of time for these guys catch up to me after 3 years. And he was a little apprehensive about that. That's not what they traded for. And so I said, okay, let me make this deal with you. Let me throw whatever I want in spring training. And if the end of spring training you think my off-speed pitches and my pitch selection suck, we'll revisit this. So he said, great. And so in spring training, I think I threw 24 innings, gave again up 1 run in 24 innings, throwing a breaking pitch. and made some people like Kingman and some other big hitters look really silly swinging at the changeup. Well, for 3 years, they had never seen anything but a fastball. So that's what they were setting on. So we start the season, and I picked up the win the first night of the season against Cleveland, coming in the fifth inning, finishing a game. And from that game till the end of the season, 71 appearances, my ERA never went over 2. And at All-Star break, I was 10-2 with 15 saves. It seemed that whenever I came into a game, our team scored runs. Poor John Matlack, he'd come into a game and they didn't score any runs. I mean, he pitched 6 innings, 7 innings, give up 2 runs and pick up a loss. It was so bad that at the end of May, Matlack was taking my uniform jersey and hanging it in the dugout when he was pitching. Yeah, it was. And then we get to the All-Star game, and Lemon brings me in the 7th inning, 1 run up. You know, as a relief pitcher, you expect to pitch 1, maybe start the 2nd inning. Well, I get out of the 7th, get into the 8th. They pinch hit Mazzilli, and I think I had 2-2 on him, threw a good fastball low and away. And Mazzilli was strictly a pull hitter. Yeah. And we're playing in this bandbox called the Kingdome. And Mazzilli gets beat, hits the ball down up in left field. It hit the top of the wooden fence and bounced back in the field, I believe. Might have bounced in the stand, but hit the top of the fence. Any other park other than Fenway, that's an out. All right, tie score. So we get into the 9th. And in my infinite wisdom, the first thing I do is walk Morgan to lead off the inning. And he's on first. And I had made a pickoff move to first base in the 8th inning. And I always did a jump shift. And the rule says you have to step toward first. You can't pivot on your back foot and then step. You have to, both feet have to leave the ground. You have to step. Well, I did this jump shift where you jumped with both of them and pivoted, so they were both off the ground. Use that move in the 8th inning, fine. 9th inning, Morgan gets up. I make the move to first, and Lee Wire, the umpire at first, National League umpire, calls a balk.
Yeah. I
went over and said, "What the hell? I used that same move last inning. You didn't call it." And he looked at me and said, "It just didn't look right." You know. And then I'm getting hot. And then he finally looks at me and he says, "You want to watch the rest of the game here or in the clubhouse?" And I should have taken the clubhouse because I was pissed. Well, then we got a guy on second, so Lemon has me intentionally walk the next guy. And then we get 2 outs, and I walk another guy to load the bases. Mazzilli comes back up, and Lemon brings in Guidry, who had pitched 2 days before, 9 innings, and Gid is tight as hell. And he ends up walking that batter, walking the winning run in. And Suter had pitched the 8th and the 9th for the National League to pick up the win. But one of the reasons Suter won, don't get me wrong, a hell of a pitcher, some good shit. I can remember Dave Parker talking to Reggie Jackson before the game saying, "Yeah, and you get to see if you can hit against Suter tonight, because none of us have had any luck with him." And that's how good Suter was. But Parker made 2 awesome throws, one in the 8th inning to third base to get the runner out, and the other one at home to get Brian Downing out, 2 laser right on the money, right. And which earned him the MVP, rightfully so, of the game. And so Suter picks up the win and I pick up the loss. But when have you seen a relief pitcher in the All-Star game pitch 3 innings?
Yeah, never. And it'll never happen again. That's for sure. But that year, you won the Rolaids AL Relief Man of the Year. You had such a great season. You were 13-5 with 29 saves and a 1.57 ERA. That was what your ERA was then.
To me, the most amazing stat from that season, if you average 1 hit per inning pitched, giving up, you've had a good year. That year, I pitched 149 innings and gave up 99 hits. To me, that is the most impressive stat.
That is impressive. Go ahead, Chris.
It was 143 to be exact innings pitched, 99 hits, and you struck out 136 that season.
Yeah, interesting enough, as a relief pitcher, I was 7th in the American League in strikeouts.
Wow. There you go. Yeah. And you also finished 4th in the Cy Young that season as well.
Yeah, that was a little bit of hard feelings there, the way I looked at it. Suter, you look at Suter's stats and compare them to my stats. Suter won the Cy Young that year in the National League.
Yeah.
And again, they had a starting pitcher. Most any starting pitcher won in the National League that year was 20. And if you look at my stats against Suter's, I think mine are as good or better. It's not so. McGregor won 23, and he rightfully won the Cy Young. But second on the Cy Young was Tommy John with 20 wins. Third was Guidry with 18.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having trouble behind those two. But again, you stop and look at the writers that are voting. There's more writers voting in New York than there is anyplace else. And not that they were biased in a nasty vein. It's just when you watch Guidry and John pitch 30, 35 games, you see how good they are, and it makes an impression on you. When you see Jim Kern pitch 3 or 4 times, the weight's going to go to the people that you've watched a whole lot more.
Still, Jim, those seasons you were amazing. I mean, I was a Met fan, a National League fan, and I knew all about you. And this is before social media, and we only got to see you pitch if you happen to be on the game of the week, or if you pitched against the Yankees. Then I got to see you pitch, but I knew Jim Kern just as much as I knew Guidry or any of the other pitchers.
You know, that's interesting you make that point, because in 77, Eck and I got selected the All-Star team, and during batting practice, the National League's hitting, and I happened to be walking behind the screen, and Sparky Anderson was there, and I really liked Sparky Anderson, and Whitey Herzog were, I thought, and Earl Weaver, I thought were the 3 best managers around. And I'm walking behind the screen, and I said to Sparky, I said, I just wanted to introduce myself and say hi. You're one of the more impressive managers, I believe, in the game. You don't know me, but I'm Jim Kern. And he looked me in the eye and he says, I know you. You're the guy that throws a fastball about the size of an aspirin. I mean, and again, like you said, even though I had never played in the National League, he knew me.
Yeah, I definitely knew you, Jim. Definitely did. Chris, go ahead. You wanted to say something. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, after that season, that was the 79 season. What happened after that 79? Did you start getting injuries?
Yeah, in 79 in spring training, toward the end of spring training, I hyperextended an elbow. I threw a pitch and it felt like somebody hit you with a ball-peen hammer on the inside of the elbow. And I knew at the time I had hyperextended the elbow. Well, I had just signed a 5-year guaranteed contract, and I tried to pitch through it. Well, I tried to lower my arm a little bit to take some of the pressure off the elbow, and I ended up freezing 3 vertebrae in the back of my neck. And to the point where I came in here and tried to pull out the left arm to bring the right one through, and it felt like somebody was pulling the trap muscle off my shoulder. Just big time pain. And so I'm trying to pitch around this, getting my ass kicked with regularity. Mm-hmm. This isn't working well. And so at the point I'm 3-11, and I get to the point where I cannot throw anymore. So we go in rehab. They do x-rays, they do this, they do that. They can find nothing wrong. So finally go to an osteopathic group in Fort Worth, Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine. Guy named Rain English and John Peckham, 2 DOs. And they do a bunch of tests and such and find that I've locked the facets that kind of fold down from vertebrae to vertebrae, and there's no movement there. And so I spend the next 9 months doing nothing but working out the left arm to build up muscle to take the pressure the right shoulder is giving it. And again, I was 6'5" and 185 pounds. And so my muscle mass was not there. And when I threw hard, it was actually pulling a vertebrae over to the right side, freezing him up. So I had to rebuild the left side totally. During that time frame, my elbow felt a whole lot better. And so in 75, strike shortened season, I'm starting to throw pretty good again. And then Eddie Robinson feels he has to make a move. So Emu's headed for New York, and had a good year in Cincinnati. Think I had about 55 appearances, 2.85 ERA. And when I got there, Bill Wagner had a no beard policy.
Yeah.
His North Korean type of rules. And so at that point, I agreed to shave the beard. And then in July, I'm having a good year. And my 4th year of the contract was guaranteed. And in 82, I was in the 3rd year, but the 5th year wasn't. So I told Wagner I need to be traded or guarantee the 5th year of my contract. And Bill, in his arrogant attitude, says, we'll do whatever in the hell we damn well please, and kicked me out of the office. Well, it was real simple. I just quit shaving. 3 weeks later, I'm gone.
There you go.
So, I mean, that worked out pretty well. And then I go to the White Sox, and La Russa and I didn't get along. I guess I didn't drink enough for him. And so, in spring training in next year, I get blood poisoning. What's it called? I had a food allergy.
Yeah, okay.
And spent 3 weeks in spring training where I couldn't even get out of bed. And so, we're starting to get our act together at the end, and we go to Texas, second game of the season. He brings me in to get me some work, which I needed. And I throw, during spring training, I had medial epicondylitis, which is inflammation of the tendon sheath, little leaguer's elbow. And they had shot me with cortisone and told me to go ahead and pitch. The doctors had told the trainer to tell me, Herb Schneider, to go ahead and pitch. You couldn't hurt it. Well, 1 out later, I throw a pitch and tear off the flexors that bring your fingers down, the pronators and supinators, completely off the elbow. I mean, they're down in here. And looking at the video, this frame of the video, my forearm's up. The next frame, my forearm's 90 degrees down.
Wow.
And tore the medial collateral in half. And so at that point, I tell the press, when they're asking me, that the doctors told me through Herm Snyder, the trainer, to go ahead and pitch. You couldn't hurt it. And I said, this happened. Well, La Russa got all bent out of shape because in his acknowledgement, I said that Herm Snyder told me to go ahead and throw, and he did, but the doctors had told him, and Herm told me the doctors had told him to tell that to me. So next spring training, I'm getting paid every month through this contract, a year round. And so I get paid in January, and then February, they release me. I'm still on a disabled list, just starting to rehab, had spent 6 months in a cast and a brace, and they release me. And I go into the clubhouse in Sarasota. My parents live down in Florida. Went down to see them. I went in the clubhouse to get my gear, and La Russa starts yelling and screaming and throws me out of the clubhouse. I guess I didn't drink with him, so I wasn't his good buddy. But that's the way all that ended. And then I continued to rehab. And then in June, the Phillies are having a tryout camp at University of Texas at Arlington. And I'm working out there, throwing to the catcher. And I happened to throw for the scout there with the other kids. And then I get a call from Philadelphia main office 2 days later. They want me to fly to Philadelphia and throw for them there. So I'm still rehabbing. I can throw the ball in the mid 90s now, but I haven't tried to throw a changeup. I haven't tried to throw a curve. I'm still nursing this elbow along pretty good. And so I fly to Philadelphia with one change of clothes. I'm supposed to throw on a Friday night and then again Saturday night to see if I can throw 2 days in a row. Well, I throw Friday night and they're impressed. I'm throwing the ball good. That night during a game, Tug McCraw pulls a muscle in his shoulder. So they're a reliever down. The next morning, instead of throwing, they offer me a contract. For $150,000 for the year, which was peanuts at that time. But, I had planned on going to AAA or AA someplace and rehabbing. So they want to pay me to rehab on a major league level. Great. So it's about 10 days later, I finally get in a game, and one inning, I gave up 7 runs. What can I say? I sucked. They took batting practice off me. I was throwing way too much where they were swinging. And so that lasted about 2 months, and they released me. And then I called Milwaukee, and Milwaukee sent me to AA in August. I pitched there for about 3 weeks. The season ended, and they called me up to the majors. And I think I pitched in 5 appearances there and didn't give up a run. So the next year we go to spring training with Milwaukee, and I get sent to Vancouver, AAA, which was a great town, and played maybe half a dozen games in AAA, and they call me up. Somebody got hurt. And I think I pitched 3 innings the first night, didn't give up any runs. And then for the next 2 months, didn't get anybody out. So, I tell people that I got traded 6 times. They kept telling me I was too valuable to keep.
Yeah. One of our, Dr. J. Thomas, who's the author of Chief's book, actually, has a question. He wants to know about your photography.
Yeah.
That's his question. It just says, please ask Jim about his photography.
Okay. I've always enjoyed photography, and when I retired, actually, I ran out of teams. I didn't retire. In '86, I started an outfitting business in '87. My wife used to accuse me of playing baseball simply to finance my hunting and fishing. My first love of life, no doubt. I started an outfitting business, Emu Outfitting. Texas is different than any other state in that it's 99% private land as it came into the union as a state. And so you have to lease land here. You have to lease hunting rights on a ranch to be able to hunt. So I would go lease a 15,000 acre ranch for, say, $2 an acre for hunting rights, and then release it to groups in different pastures for $3 and $4 an acre. And so at this point, I was always into photography, but it really became big at that point because I needed it for advertising, pictures of deer, trophies, such, and really fell in love with it. Then I started managing fishing lodges, the American Office of Fishing Lodges in Brazil's Amazon, maybe 1,400 miles from the ocean. Areas that had never had a road punched into them, never been timbered. So completely wild, like the Portuguese saw it when they first showed up in the 1500s. And again, the photography became huge because I'm seeing things most people don't get an opportunity to see. We were fishing for peacock bass, which would go upwards of 20 pounds. And so pictures of these exotic fish. And then we go to Alaska, and I manage a lodge in Alaska for half a dozen years, 180 air miles from the nearest road. There's myself and the wife, probably 1,400 miles up in the Amazon, and a lodge they had built up on a hill there. But this, the only people around there are the natives with hand lines. Here, this picture's interesting. This is a airboat in Alaska for spring bear hunting. The ice on Lake Iliamna was too honeycomb that time of the year to be able to go across to get to our hunting grounds. So the owner, Jerry Pippin, decided to get this airboat to go across the ice about 40 miles an hour And if you broke through, you just kept on going. This thing had a 580 cubic inch motor, diapose propellers. This thing would wake up the dead at 3 miles. It would get us where we wanted to go, but every brown bear you ever seen had heard us about an hour before and were hauling ass up the hill. Yeah. Yeah, but the photography was big. Now, this is Texas, a ranch I guided on in photography between Abilene and St. Angelo called the Buffalo 4 Ranch. Some of the deer we had. Here's a sizzle-tailed flycatcher. Birds really fascinate me. This is one that had a bug in its mouth. There's another one of our huge whitetails.
It's great.
And I was born and raised in Michigan, and you never saw a deer like this. I mean, we've got deer that'll. This guy we called the assassin because he would fight with deer. He would just didn't want to beat them. He would get them on the ground and run them through with those horns.
Look at those.
Watched him kill 3 or 4 deer.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's some great stuff. I got a couple people are texting me questions, so I'm going to ask you one. Is it true that you used to eat newspapers? Because 3 people just texted me. They want to know about that.
Well, I ate a couple of texts in the Marine Corps in boot camp. If you got more than 1 letter a day, you read one and ate the rest of them. I mean, that was just the way it went with the drill instructors. And so we're on a plane. We're in Baltimore in 79. I made a horrendous play in Baltimore to lose the game. Guys on first and second, a bunt. I get over in a hurry, throw to third, get the advancing runner. And just as I let go of the ball, I heard, "Kearney, no!" And it's a third baseman, Buddy Bell, standing next to me. Well, the ball goes in left field, 2-run score. We lose the game. I'm pissed. So we get on a plane flying back to Texas. And like I said, the press flew with us. And Jim Reeves from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram had been reading, I think it was, a long book like War and Peace, and for about 3 road trips. And he was right down at the end of it. And I was pissed in a bad mood, and everybody was hanging their head. And I grabbed Revo's book, and he jumped at me, and I threw it to Sparky in the seat. Revo jumped at him. Sparky throws it back to me and grabs Revo and holds him. And as he was holding him, I opened up and tore the last 3 pages out of the book and ate them one at a time. You know, and we're just lightening the mood. And poor Revo was just, it was Dean's book.
That's a
Watergate.
That's a great story.
And so he just came apart. So I have become famous for that.
Okay, that's why. In 1986, you did go back to the Cleveland Indians, right? And I think, was this your final game? You gave up a bunch of runs, and when you were leaving the field, the fans were booing you and throwing garbage and almost hit you with a bottle. And you said, "I knew they couldn't hit me as they were one of my fans."
Yeah, that did happen. After I destroyed the elbow, you know, I spend a little bit of time with the team. I looked good to begin with, and then everybody catch up to me and I'd get released. So my thing was, when I destroyed the elbow, I had 8 years and 156 days of major league time. 10 years was maximum pension benefit. And you had to have 162 days on the roster, 172, I think, to constitute a year. And so I needed a year and 16 days. And so what I would do is I would throw all winter. And when spring training came, I would go as a non-roster player with a team. And I was as good as I was going to get. The kids hadn't done anything all winter. They were rusty, so I really looked good in spring training, and I'd make the club. And then about 2 months later, I'm gone, you know, once the kids catch up to me. So the last year, I needed like 60 days to get 10 years. And so I go to Cleveland, and there's 26 people on the staff trying to make 10 spots, maybe 11. So I knew the first day I had to get people looking at me. I'm 36 years old and has been. So I'm throwing as hard as I can, and we come in the clubhouse, and that was in batting practice. Come in the clubhouse, and your veterans like Tabler and some of these people are bitching like hell because goddamn Kern is throwing the ball 100 miles an hour. We're in batting practice trying to hit it. Well, what it did is it opened the coach's eyes, and they started hearing Kern's an asshole and Kern's throwing too hard. Well, everybody's looking at me. So I eventually make the team. And again, as the season progresses, I'm getting hit harder and harder as the kids come up to speed. So yeah, in that game, I pitched 1 inning against Texas, gave up 8 runs this time. And, goodbye ERA. And so on that, when I come off the mound, fans are throwing stuff. They're drunk as hell. And one throws a bottle at me, and I didn't even see the bottle. Didn't even know it was thrown at me. And afterwards they say, yeah. And so, I'm me not being in a good mood again. I said, I know he couldn't hit me. It was one of my fans.
That's a great line. Chris, you want to bring up the book and talk to Jim real fast about
Let me tell you one more story.
Okay,
the
go ahead.
story was Sparky Lyle. I mean,
yes.
Pinky May in A-ball. I'm getting hit really hard in the first couple innings, good moving fastballs, moving to left, right, dead center, Pinky comes out to the mound and says, Kearney, we got to take you out. And I looked at Pinky and I said, but I'm not tired. And Pinky looks at me and he says, yeah, but the goddamned outfielders are.
That was great.
That's great. That is a great one.
Love it.
Go ahead, Chris. Yeah,
all right, Jim, let us know about your book you wrote here about some time in the Rangers.
This is 70-80 Tales from Texas Rangers. This is the old guys. This picture here of my friends, Gaylord Perry holding me, Fergie in the middle, Sparky beating the hell out of me. That's what happens when you ask friends to take a picture with you. What we did is put together stories. This has nothing to do with baseball strategy and stuff. This is the BS that went on in the clubhouse, on the road, in spring training. A lot of stories about the old Rangers, Gaylord, Fergie, Sparky, Danny Darwin, John Ellis, Mickey Rivers, Al Oliver, Richie Zisk, Toby Hara, Hargrove. But these are stories, and a lot of them are told. Tom Grieve tells stories. They're told in their own voice of how these things went down. This is what I loved about Major League Baseball, was the bullshit that went on in the clubhouse and on the road more than I did the game itself.
Yeah, that's what everybody loves. Chris, that's the QR code, right?
Yeah, the QR code's up there in the left-hand corner of the screen. That takes you directly to Jim Kern's Amazon page where the book is there. If you want to purchase it, check it out. It sounds like it's going to be an amazing book to read.
Yeah, and if you're an Amazon member, you can just read it as well.
There you go.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to reading that book. We got a couple of minutes left. Chris, you want to ask Jim the question we ask every guest?
Okay, Jim. We always ask our guest this final question. I'm not sure if you follow baseball now, but if you were named baseball commissioner today, what changes would you make to the game?
Well, putting a runner on an extra innings. The question is, does that go on the pitcher's ERA? I mean, it's definitely going to go on his win-loss. To me, that's a bunch of BS. If look at what percentage of the game goes over 2 or 3 extra inning games, and it's like Bob Gibson in 62 when he had a 1.15 ERA. They lower the mound 6 inches for one pitcher, and look at all the total ERA for the season against previous season. It isn't dramatically different because one guy had an awesome season. They lower the mound for everybody. Every rule change in baseball you look at is oriented strengthening the offense. To me, the powers that be seem to think a 3.5 hour 10-9 game is more interesting than a 2 hour 2-1 game.
Yeah, which we know it isn't. Both are great in their own ways, but everybody loves seeing a great pitcher's duel, and you don't see too many of those. All right, even though that's usually the last question, we got a couple of minutes, and I wanted to ask you about something you you told us before we came on about Sparky Lyle's hamburger machine.
Well, Sparky, when we got traded to Texas in '79, and so did Sparky, I can remember during a midwinter banquet, he said, "You want to go see my house? I just bought a house." And so we went and got a cab and went around to see his house. Well, we had 1 or 10 drinks, we were feeling no pain. We drive around for an hour and Sparky can't find his house. Yeah. And so we go back to the hotel, and then I happened to buy the house right across the road from Sparky. So we're neighbors, and Sparky's big thing was purchase of the day. I mean, Sparky, the only guy I knew, my locker was next to his in the clubhouse. He had a hamburger making machine in his locker. And Sparky was called the Count, was his nickname, because I always figured it was because he was Count Dracula. You never saw him in the daylight. Sparky was a night person. And so he would get up about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, come to the ballpark, make himself a hamburger, which was his breakfast and lunch before the game. Sparky's best purchase was him and Buddy Bell, who just lived down the road, drove into the ballpark every day. And they're driving past A.T. Lowry Toyota dealership. And here is this Toyota Tacoma, jacked up to the max, big tires on it, chrome roll bar, floodlights across the roll bar. And Sparky stops and buys it on the way to the ballpark, drives it to the ballpark. And so he has a clubhouse boy go out and buy a 4x8 sheet of plywood, 2 cans of white paint and 1 can of black. And he paints the plywood white, stands it up in the back of the truck, in the bed of the truck against the roll bar, and paints. His wife was Mary. And he paints on the board, "Mary, this is ours, Sparky." In the parking lot. So when she rolls in, here's this jacked up Toyota truck, fire engine red, with this 4x8 sheet of plywood informing her, "This is ours."
That's great.
Yeah, that was Sparky. I mean, greatest guy you'd ever want to meet in the world. But he was awesome just to hang around. Euchre, you would pay to go out drinking with Euchre just to listen to the bullshit. Bob was the quickest. Bob Euchre and Pat Dobson were the quickest wit you've ever seen in your life. And Euchre would sit there and come up with this stuff you could not believe. And just deadpanning it. Oh, yeah. I mean, going out to drink with Euchre was unbelievable. The only one close to him, only 2, were Pat Dobson and Boog Powell. Oh, Boog Powell was an absolute piece of work. I mean, 6'4", 270. Yeah. His locker in Cleveland was always next to the shower. And Buddy Bell was a young kid, and Buddy walked by Boog one day, and Boog sitting there with nothing but a towel in his lap on the way to the shower. And Boog looks at him and says, "Nice pooper, Bud." And after that, Bud would not take a shower when Boog was in the clubhouse. I mean, that's what I loved about the game was this BS.
Yeah, that's what most of the guys tell us. You guys have the best stories. I love hearing them. Jim, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it. I mean, thank you, you have an open invitation because I didn't get a chance to ask you half the things I wanted to talk to you about. I mean, you've been great. We really appreciate it. Chris, could you
read the book? You'll it's nothing but those type of stories.
Great. Chris, real quick, could you put the Wednesday show thing up before we get out of here? Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time is inning 8 of our exciting baseball quiz show with other creators. If you haven't seen it yet, Clearing the Bases. It's 8:30. It's a quick show. It's like half hour to 45 minutes, and it's really good. Everybody has been enjoying it, and it's just a baseball. If you love baseball, you love questions, and you want to hear us answer those questions, it's a great new show, and we're getting a lot of good reviews. So that's on Wednesday, and then Friday night, 10 p.m. It's me and Chris. I'll let you guys know if we have a guest on Friday night. But once again, Jim, thanks for spending the hour with us. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Enjoyed it.
I'm glad you did.
And guys, not just for the book, also check out his Facebook page, Jim Kern Photography. I was just going through some of the photos earlier, and some of the other ones are just unreal. Definitely check
Well,
them out.
instead of Jim Kern Photography, just go to Jim Kern. I haven't done much with the photography here lately. And again, to show you the attitude hasn't changed, here's the shirt I have on.
That's a great shirt.
I love that shirt.
That's an awesome shirt.
But anyway,
The attitude still sucks. What can I say?
That's all right.
Great.
It fits
All right.
you perfect, Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. We appreciate it. We'll see everybody Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m.
Take care.
All right. Have a good